Good day. We are rolling, and we are going to head straight to Shit Creek and maybe throw out one or both of our paddles. We are going to talk about race and racism. I want to answer 3 questions, if I can, in this short time, without boring you to bits. 3 questions. Is Western society fundamentally racist? What questions need to be asked? And what is speaking truth to power? So, yes. So, is the Western world fundamentally racist? No. The British Empire expended a lot of its excess resources on trying to outlaw slavery, and we fought tooth and nail against the Muslims to stop their ever-ending slave trade, which comes up when it can, but mostly it's completely been stamped out. It's a huge stain on America's history, and they bear, just like we do with our Aboriginals, we still bear the guilt of it today, which is, I think, which many of our ancestors would find strange, interesting, pathetic that we do feel this, but we do feel this, and that's fine. It really is, especially if people want to manipulate you on those grounds. It's fine for you to be guilty for something that you never did, because there is resources to be gained from you feeling these feelings. I say we live in the least racist society that's ever lived up until perhaps the early to mid 2000s, when it became really evident that there was a lot of anti-white racism coming on, especially, funnily enough, from inside the white community. We're pretty atomized and scattered and alone, but whites are very self-hating in general. And this sort of leads me to say, well, what needs to be asked? Well, people aren't asking any questions, really. They're just saying change needs to be done. Well, congratulations. You know, it's not clever or nuanced or sophisticated to say that racism needs to end and that kneeling on some guy's neck until he dies is bad. Of course it is. You know, and from what I see from George Floyd incident, it doesn't look like, aside from the murder, I know that's kind of a part of this, kind of big, justice will be done. This guy is going to get fisted. He was, at the very least, an asshole, by the looks of things. Negligent, had a bad day. Who knows what's going on? But he looks, but the FBI's on it now. It didn't need all this extra media attention in order to have justice be done, regardless of what everyone actually thinks. And so, putting that aside, people are using this as a lever to forward, to move their agenda, their ideas that they prefer, to make them feel right about the way they think about the world, to make them feel sometimes superior, or they're sharing these posts to make themselves look virtuous, when I warn you that it is vanity. It is a sickening kind of vanity. What needs to be asked? What needs to be done? What needs to be asked? What needs to be asked is, why are blacks committing more crimes than whites? What needs to be asked is why, underneath that, what needs to be asked, why the black family is so terrible. To say broadly, to speak broadly. The African American community, they treat each other extremely poorly. There's an idea floating around the Aboriginal and in the African American community that whites are against you. This perverts the mind of any person. If they are part of a group that is being suppressed, this will pervert the mind of any person that believes this and lets it into their heart and starts to bring in that kind of truth from the outside world, because they will start to see it naturally, because 50% of the murders in that country are committed by black people, and then there's the other crimes underneath that as well. One of the ways in which you restrain teenagers is by giving them a gift, a bonus, the prize on the other end of following society's rules. Why crush your individuality? Well, because there's something to be gained. In a way, we've whittled away, pissed away the middle class existence, where real savings were possible, where women could choose not to work if they didn't want to work, if they didn't have the vanity to bring themselves out to work, and if they wanted to stay home, and if that wasn't so offensive to stay home, then it could be done, and there would actually be savings in it at the other end of it, even after all the children. You know, now we're kind of deleting ourselves, but that's another story. That prize on the other end of it is even further away from blacks, because in my honest and true opinion, they're doing it to themselves. More than half of African American women admit to being raped before the age of 16 by another black male. It is so hard to even really comprehend what that can do to the next generation, to the person itself, to the diminishing of the capacity to bond, all this sorts of stuff. This kind of trauma echoes down generations, the same way war does, the same way horrific beatings do. That alone is awful. In most places, 80% of African Americans grow up without a father in the house. And there's even cases where there are multiple, where the children that are growing up in the house are also half siblings, so there's other men as well. And most people in the Western world hit their children. So compile these for a minute and just see what kind of outcomes are to be expected. I'm not a determinist, but we live in a society that really likes to negate choice, that likes to push choice away. We actually prefer, in a lot of ways, to disempower ourselves. There's this epigenetic thing that humans have in their bodies, where their brain and body will prepare for war, for early death, for fast, rapid reproduction and low investment in children and childbearing, when their perceived environment is dangerous, fundamentally. None of this is being talked about. That is something that is hurtful and hurtful to say, and even more hurtful to hear. And it'll also very much offend people who, probably even white people who hardly ever meet black people, because it's running against the narrative. White people are more likely to be shot by cops in that country. It's just flat out true. White people are more likely to be killed by police in that country than blacks are. And black coppers are more likely to shoot African American people, criminals, possible criminal suspects, whatever. There's things like the warrior gene, which no one will ever talk about. You've got to look this stuff up. I'm already treading into some really harsh territory, but there is just grief that goes completely unacknowledged, and grief that is not dealt with properly in the way that can, I don't know, vindicate the real victims in all this. Is society fundamentally racist? No. What questions need to be asked? Well, I've just stepped on a landmine for you. 3. What is speaking truth to power? Well, in a way, it is speaking honesty to ignorance in a world where there's too many facts and where facts never actually change people's minds anyway. You're an irrational being, so am I. We bring rationality in to the fold, but it's not our fundamental wiring, never has been. We didn't have facts for the longest time. We had instincts, we had ideas, and for a while, only a short while, we've had principles in which to ground all this knowledge as our foundation. And we actually threw that out somewhere in the middle of the last century. And so speaking honesty to ignorance will be the only way to appear genuine, and we may in a way be at the mercy of very disgruntled masses who will just have to come around and choose life, choose to let us live. Who knows? What is speaking truth to power? It will be speaking virtue to vanity. That's a big one. Because the lies are being propagated, partly because they're popular, by people who want to be popular. It's that simple. It really is. And I want you to pay close attention to what is underneath everything that a public figure is saying. Because we're getting to a strange place where the unconscious, the collective unconscious of a society, is starting to come out very literally and very clearly in the figureheads of movements and people who are at the pinnacles of influence. You see it in clips in CNN. It's quite sickening if you're over in America. And places like The Project are just a bed of sophistry, just complete, utter emotional manipulation, people boosting their profiles, all sorts of bullshit. The guy who's running for president against Donald Trump said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And that's actually been somewhat the implicit assumption underneath voting for the left-wing party the last, well, as long as I've been paying attention to politics, which is about 5-7 years. Honesty in the face of ignorance, virtue in the face of vanity, and truth. Truth to the devils in your own house and in your own heart. In your own heart. I believe that the Illuminati's inside your fucking head. It's a weird thing to say at the end of this. But when you believe you're not in control, you've handed over your control. Asking someone to change so that way you can feel better, can live in peace, you disempower yourself. It's really that simple. People want reparations, people want the rent paid. You're putting yourself into a slavish box. You've already decided that you're lower and that you need. And you refuse to acknowledge that you've been free this entire time, and the power that you need is almost within your grasp. And yet you, black or white, are choosing to wear your pain on your chest like a badge, which would be fine if you had the balls to wear your heart on your sleeve. But you are a snake. And one day you'll bite the wrong person and you'll be snuffed out. To all my right-thinking people out there, I hope you're well. Peace and love to you all, and power to you.